The next guy coming up to the stage is a Sycamore High School graduate. Is Sycamore in the house? Is Sycamore in the house? He was, they're like, we're Sycamore, we only scream so much. All right, I just want you to know. Just a little scream, woot, there you go, all right? This gentleman was a part of the Forbes 30 under 30 individuals. He is the founder of a company called No Cow Please. And I want you to know, if you got tummy troubles like myself, you feel what I'm saying? You'll learn to respect people like this guy. But the thing about him that I really want to share, that's really special. I asked him, what's the hardest thing you've ever been through? And he said this thing, please pay attention. He said, some people talk about my company, but there was a time in my life where I almost lost it. And as an entrepreneur, I know that a lot of people give me accolades, that I went from having an IEP to being a CEO. I went from speaking to my friends in special ed class to speaking at places like the Smithsonian, speaking at national conventions, speaking at the Texas Association of Secondary School Principals, speaking in Tokoloco, South Africa. Like people see that, right? But what they don't see is that due to my problems, I almost lost the company. I almost wasn't able to stand here before you and speak. See, we could talk about this blueprint. We could talk about the blueprint, and we could talk about plan, build, lead. We could talk about all of this stuff. But unless we tell you the truth, it means nothing. So the guy who's coming up right now is an amazing success who's also seen a lot of failure. Ladies and gentlemen, this gentleman that's coming to the stage was someone that had to mentor himself because he didn't have a lot of people that would take him under his wing. This is a fighter. Give it up for Daniel Katz.
What's going on? How is everybody? Good. All right. So as you just mentioned, I went to Sycamore High School. Backup quarterback, led our team to a losing season, unfortunately. But it was all good. Where is Sycamore? I heard him somewhere. Those were the cheers I got when I was the backup quarterback, so not much better than that. But I'm from Cincinnati. I was born and raised here. And to be honest, my story is not much different than all of yours standing here today. I'm just a kid from Ohio who came up with an idea and refused to take the path that is most common traveled. And you know, I think with anybody who's in our age group, and I'm just going to say I'm in your age group because I'm 23 years old, it's really important that we think about our future, right? Not 10 years from now, but today. So I think that's the biggest difference. For me, I wanted immediate gratification. I have absolutely no patience in life, and I think that's one of the things that makes anybody really a successful entrepreneur. Zero patience, right? I want everything to happen yesterday, not 10 years from now. And it's that motivation that allowed me to get to the point where I am today, right? So let me walk you through just my basic story. I won't bore you. I know it's super boring, but I was 16 years old. I actually graduated high school when I was 16. I was always very entrepreneurial. I always wanted to be older, right? I wanted to be out in the real world. I wanted to do everything that I kind of thought of in my mind. I wanted to go out and do. And a lot of the ideas were really crazy. Some were very strange. Which did not go well with my high school friends. I was not very popular. You know, wasn't part of the whole sports crowd. I kind of did my own thing, and you know, the reason why is because there are so many people that are telling you can't do something, right? So when you look around, you know, let's fast forward, or not fast forward, but rewind back to when I was in high school, right? Call it 14, 15 years old, just starting high school, and wanted to do it all. I wanted to buy and sell cars. I wanted to start a car dealership. I wanted to take all these ideas that were going on in my mind and turn them into reality. And you know what I heard? No. Everybody said you can't do it. Everybody said those ideas are unrealistic. You cannot make it happen. You will not succeed. You have to go to college. You have to graduate high school in 4 years. You have to take all your classes. You have to get a 4.0 GPA. You know what I said? Bullshit. I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss, I'm sorry, but that's what I said. Right? And yes, I got yelled at a lot for cussing when I was in high school. But for me, right, it's not about what others are doing, it's about what others aren't doing. how do I separate myself and go after my dreams and goals for the ones that are saying I can't do it, and basically, take them, put it on mute, and go do my own thing, right? So that's what I did. I took the road less traveled, so to speak, and I turned the ideas in my mind and turned them into reality. So when I was in high school, like I said, I wanted to buy and sell cars, and I did. I bought a car off Craigslist, I turned it around, I flipped it, I made a couple $1,000s, and that eventually allowed me to start my own car dealership in high school, right? So I'd go to class during the day, I'd come back home, and I started a car dealership. I eventually bought a house when I was 15 years old, redid it, sold it, lost a lot of money, but it was a great experience. So I went through a lot of these ventures when I was just your age, right? And I know it sounds crazy to think, how does a 15-year-old start a car dealership? I didn't even have my license yet, right? How does he buy a house? How does he do all these things that are just unheard of? I don't listen to anybody, right? You almost have to be rebellious in your own way in order to succeed. And that's something that's really, really important, is don't listen to what others are saying, because the ones who are telling you you can't are the ones who haven't been able to in their lives. It's just the truth, right? So statistically looking at it, and I know this is going to sound super depressing, probably one person out of this entire auditorium will succeed, right? And I know it sucks, I know it doesn't sound great, but statistically looking at it, those are probably the numbers. I kind of just made it up, but it sounds about right. So statistically, things are not on your side, right? I think the difference between you and I is that my dream from when I was younger did not change, right? Because what happens is when you're 4 or 5 years old and you want to say, I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be a singer, or I want to go to the NFL, right? Things start to change as you get into high school and you hear from others, you can't, that's unrealistic, don't do it, it's impossible. That's the difference, right? I said, no, I'm going to go out and do it. And from an early age, I was lucky enough to know exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to start a company. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So as I went through high school, my biggest goal was, how do I get out? And how do I do it quickly? And I'm just going to be honest with you. I was not a good student. I probably had a 2.0 GPA, if that. And it wasn't due to not being smart or just not, having the same education as everybody else. It had to do with my focus being somewhere else. Right? I wanted to succeed far beyond school. I didn't want to go the traditional path of college. And first off, I'm not advocating for everybody to drop out of school like I did and not go to college, but there are different paths, and not everybody takes the exact same one. And quite honestly, if we all did that, we'd all end up in the same exact place. So I think that's really, really important. As I graduated high school, like I said, I was 16. There were a lot of things that happened in between, a lot of failed ventures that I did. But long story short of it, I came up with an idea to start a protein bar company, right? And protein bars, I don't know if any of you have gone down the aisle at a grocery store, it's very crowded. There's lots and lots of protein bars. Back in 2014, when I started the company, there were 1,400 new protein bars that hit the store shelves, right? So super, super competitive, and there's only so much shelf space. So everybody was telling me, that is the stupidest idea you could possibly imagine. How can you succeed? How can you compete against multi-billion-dollar companies? And I'll get to the facts of the matter, but a couple years down the road, a multi-billion-dollar company actually bought a piece of my company. So these are the same people saying you can't, and I proved them wrong. So my goals shifted from what do I want to do to how do I prove every single person wrong. So long story short of it, I started this protein bar company. I started making this stuff in my kitchen. It was my mom's kitchen actually, and just put a bunch of ingredients together and made a protein bar that worked perfectly for me and something that I thought a lot of people would really, really enjoy, right? So it was dairy-free. It was the world's first dairy-free protein bar that was low sugar, high in protein. I created it in my kitchen, and I started calling every single retailer I could, right? And again, everybody said, you can't do that. You have to hire a sales team. You have to have a full sales staff. You have to go about it with a suit and tie. Again, I'm not going to say the word, but BS, we'll just say. Wrong. Right? I took my own path, and I picked up the phone and I called every single retailer I could. And I got meetings with them. Target, GNC, Walmart, Kroger, every single retailer I got a meeting with. And I walked in there, shorts and a t-shirt, usually they were wearing suits and ties, and I held up a baggie of this stuff that I made in my kitchen and said, this is the greatest protein bar ever created. And they looked at me obviously like I was crazy, like how did we even say yes to this meeting? How old are you? We don't even know what's happening right now. But, fast forward, we ended up actually getting into GNC, which, today is a little bit different than it was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, it had 4,000 stores, and, it was a really good retailer, especially for protein bars where it's so competitive. So they said it's a great product, but it tastes like crap. And obviously that wasn't great for the ego of a 17-year-old kid walking in there thinking that, I just dedicated my whole life to this, and they said the product was bad. So, for every yes that I got, I probably heard about 10 no's. And most of them were for retailers that literally were the ones who were gonna, provide revenue for our company that was gonna allow it to succeed. So that was tough. And I tell everybody, not just a business, but in anything you do, it's a roller coaster, right? So I know that you just heard a bunch of accolades and Forbes and Inc. and all these things that sound great on paper, but the amount of work that goes into it, I don't think anybody truly understands. I spent 18-hour days, 7 days a week, living inside of my office space building this company. It was kind of funny, actually. It was definitely not great for dating, I'll tell you that right now. But I had a bed sitting right here, I had my computer right there, and I had a file cabinet that was for all my clothes. So that's kind of how I lived for about a year and a half, building this thing that I knew was going to be a success. So back to the GNC stuff, they said, great product, it just doesn't taste good. So what did I do? I naturally went right to their competitor, Vitamin Shoppe, and they said, great products, if you can produce it in 90 days, then we will write you a purchase order and launch it in 200 stores. So I didn't even know what a purchase order was at the time, I gotta be totally honest with you. I didn't know how to produce bars, I didn't have packaging, I did not know anything, I didn't know what I was doing. So basically I called what's known as a co-packer, a contract manufacturer, and I said, hey, I need somebody to make this product for me. And basically to summarize, it's a manufacturing partner that I basically teach how to make the product, and I use their space and their employees to make the protein bars for us. So Vitamin Shoppe did exactly what they said. They launched it in 200 stores. It was my first order ever. I think it was a couple $1,000s, and I was jumping up and down. It was it. I hit it, I made the big leagues, it was awesome, right? But obviously the work doesn't stop there. That's when the packaging issues come, that's when the product issues come, and there's just a million problems, and I don't want to bore everybody. But fast forward 2 years, we go from doing about $1,000 a year to $50,000 a day in sales as a one-man team, right? And I know that a lot of companies, or a lot of people think that sounds crazy, and when I started this business, I was not going for how do I become the smallest protein bar company out there that's sitting on the shelf in one store. The mission was always, how do I be the best? How do I become the #1 best protein bar on the entire planet, right? And that vision stayed true from the beginning till the end. And I think that's important, right? In anything we do, whether you want to be a singer, whether you want to be a musician, whether you want to be anything, why shoot for something low? You have to shoot for the top. And when you shoot for the top, make sure that does not change, because you're going to have a lot of outside influence, right? It's the same thing that we hear about with drinking, right? I know that we're at the age here where everybody talks about peer pressure and partying and don't get pressured by your peers, and that's great, but why is nobody talking about your future? Because peer pressure is something that is a real thing that is happening today, right? The same way that your friends are peer pressuring you to drink or do bad things, they're also peer pressuring you to not focus on what's really important to you. So raise your hand if you want to be a singer. Let's just start with that. 1, 2, it's kind of hard to see back there, but 3. Okay, raise your hand if you wanted to be a singer 5 years ago. All right, I'm seeing more hands. So what happens is you start with the vision and it dies off. And it's so important that as you go through high school, as you go with friends and you meet with them, that your values can maintain true. I'll tell you, throughout high school, there was no peer pressure for me. I said no, and I got really good at saying no. I've never had a sip of alcohol in my life. I probably never will. It's something I'm not interested in. It doesn't bother me. We tend to focus so much on the small things when we're at this age that really do not mean, they're meaningless, right, in the future. I mean, I can't tell you, I'm 23 years old right now, and I can't remember a weekend or going to a friend's house or any of these small things that I know sound so important right now. What I can remember is graduating school when I was 16, setting up my air mattress, my first purchase order, the first time that I was able to actually see some money from this company, the first sale that I had, the first time I walked down the street and somebody said, do you make the no-cap bars because they're my favorite product ever, right? That's the stuff that you remember. So I know it sounds totally crazy for a 23-year-old to come up here and say, listen, we're now available in 20,000 stores. Everybody who said we couldn't is now calling us to try to get the product in their stores. Like I mentioned, we had General Mills, who's obviously one of the largest food manufacturing companies in the world, actually bought a piece of the company back in 2017. And to be honest, they were one of the companies at the beginning that basically said, we're going to squash you. And there's absolutely no chance. You have no money, you have no people, you have no experience. we're going to kill you, right? And it sounds intimidating, but you need to be able to phase that out and be able to focus on what's really, really important to you. And if you know that you can do something at the highest level possible, it's gonna take you there. You just gotta focus on it, and everything that you do, every single small thing leads to something big, right? The small things make the big things happen. So keep that in mind. I know that, it's real easy to get into like the whole motivational talk and make this seem like a very structured thing, but I'll be honest, I've never done a speaking event before. This is something that Anthony asked me to do, and I love the foundation. I think that, we're at an age here, and like I said, I'm kind of part of this age range that's so critical to our futures. And rather than focusing on 10 years down the road of what can I do that's gonna make 10 years from now better, what can I do today? What can you guys do today? Because I'll tell you, when I started, it was younger than a lot of you, right? When I started this company, it was earlier. I was flying around the world, I was meeting with retailers, I was trying to make this dream and this vision come to life. So as you sit here today and you think about, this all sounds great, 5 years down the road once I graduate from school, or 10 years down the road once I get my master's, it sounds great, but it starts today. Why waste those 5 or 10 years, right? All right, that's kind of all I had, but. What I do want to do is I'd love to do some questions and answers, because I know that this story sounds a bit strange to most, but I'd love to take some questions from you guys and answer them. And then after that, whoever raised their hand to say they wanted to be a singer first, I'm going to give you the opportunity. So you're going to sing in front of all these people. All right? All right, does anybody have any questions? No questions? Yes? If I ever thought about going on Shark Tank? Yes and no. I have been reached out to by Shark Tank a few times. The company's at a point now where we don't need any funding, so it probably wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to go on there. Yes? How did I stay focused? Adderall. Just kidding. Just kidding. But in all seriousness, just like 95% of you, I have ADD, I have anxiety, I have every problem that you have, right? So I know your parents probably say, what's wrong with you? You've got ADD, you've got to focus. 95% of us have that same issue, and like my flight back home today, I don't know how I'm gonna survive, so it's a real thing. But focusing, I will say that Adderall thing was a joke, by the way. Pretend I didn't say that. But in order to be focused, you need to have one macro level goal in mind, right? So for me, it was, how do I create the world's biggest protein bar company? And obviously, I'm not even close to that yet, right? But that's the goal. So the big level goal is here, and there's a bunch of micro level goals that build up to that point. So I'm not sitting there writing it down on a piece of paper saying, okay, what are the goals? What do I need to do in order to get to this point? It's really focusing on that big goal of how do I become the best protein bar company in the world? And everything kind of falls into place. I mean, I'll tell you guys, like I mentioned before, this sounds like it was just an overnight success and all of a sudden you're on Forbes and all these things, but that is totally not true. I've made every mistake in the books like 10 times, pretty much. I've lost millions of dollars in really just things that I just didn't know what to do, right? Like, we misspelled chocolate on the front of our package, which ran on 300,000 protein bars, which went nationwide. So that was embarrassing. I think that might have been the dyslexia also, because I have that issue too. But yeah, you gotta be focused on the main goal, and if you're focused on the main goal, obliterate everything in its way. When people tell you can't do it, just squash them. Go around them, go right through them. When there's an obstacle, when they say you can't put 22 grams of protein in one protein bar, you figure it out, right? And pretty much everything I've done to this point has been, let's just guess and check and figure it out and see what happens. So, yep.
So you've gone over time about 8 minutes, but I gotta tell you something.
Go.
So I was gonna open up the floor for Daniel to do Q&A. And I could tell when I met Daniel, there was something about him that was special. And before I introduced him on stage, I could tell that this guy is a fighter. Daniel, I'm allowed you to get one more question from this crowd.
How can I take you seriously when you're swinging on that swing?
Hey, you ain't gotta take me seriously. You got one more question. Go ahead.
All right, who wants it? Yes. Where do I see myself in 10 years? That's a tough one, right? You know, I really don't focus on 10 years in the future. I focus on today. So today, it's about how do I win every single day and hope I'm in a good position then. So to be honest with you, literally have given zero thought to the future. It's today. It's yesterday, right? Everything happens yesterday. So that's it.
So before he goes off stage, I gotta let you, so this is my first time emceeing this event. I usually keynote. And every time I keynote, I do exactly what you just did. I always go overtime. Like, if you've ever heard me speak, you probably were late to class. You feel what I'm saying? I just want you to know, and I hope y'all take him up on this. He put his information. You can put that back up on the board. I want you guys to know that very rarely are you going to find someone with this much fight. Very rarely do you find someone with this much belief in themselves. And the one thing that I know as an entrepreneur and just as a man, there is no greater gift than to share this love with you. Mr. Katz, you did a great job.
Thank you. And guys, you all have this fight inside of you, and I'm serious when I say that. We all have it. It just needs to be unlocked, right? And there's a lot of these influences that are not unlocking it. I'm here to say you can do it because I'm not smart. I have ADD. I'm dyslexic, right? I'm the same as everybody here. I just found out how to unlock that passion and go for it. And you can do the exact same thing.